Welcome to Echo Ekoji, where we explore the voices, paths, and everyday stories of the Jodo Shinshu Buddhist community.
I'm Joe Gochi, a member of the Seattle Buddhist Temple and an Ekoji virtual member, and I'm here with my co-host Andrea Chapman, the current president of Ekoji Buddhist Temple in Fairfax Station, Virginia.
Today we are joined by someone who feels like family, Molly Kuramoto. She's a lay Dharma leader, a lifelong learner, and a compassionate caretaker to more than 70 animals on her farm.
Molly holds a graduate degree in library science, is a professional pet groomer by day, and a Dharma speaker whose messages are often as fun as they are profound.
She served on the Ekoji's board of directors during the pandemic, participated in the BCA's Minister's Assistant Program, and even co-hosted this podcast in its early audio-only days.
We're grateful she's agreed to step in front of the mic this time as a guest. Molly, welcome back to Echo Ekoji.
Thank you.
Molly, we're going to start with an easy question for you. What first drew you to Jodo Shinshu Buddhism, and how did you know it was the one?
Ekoji was the start of it. When we moved to the area, we didn't have much of a social network, my spouse and I, and so we went online. We were looking at various churches, and he's from a Buddhist family, so he said, "Well, let's look at Buddhist temples." And Ekoji had the friendliest webpage. But I knew it was the one, which happens later. Um, because I really appreciated Shinran Shonen's focus on providing a spiritual practice that's accessible to everybody.
Thank you very much. Was there a particular moment, a phrase, a teaching that kind of flipped a switch for you spiritually and you said, boy, this really does resonate with me?
I don't think that there actually was just one moment or one teaching. I think with each new thing, you kind of take it in and see how it sits and how you feel about it. And so far, this path has just really resonated with us.
Excellent. Thank you.
So Molly once said, "I am a Buddhist, not the Buddha." Can you tell us that story?
I like that.
Yeah, absolutely I can. So I am not always the nicest human being. Shocker, I know. But I do have a tendency to speak my mind even when that is maybe not ideal.
Yeah.
And so with this particular story, I can be a bit of a smart aleck at work, and one of my coworkers was getting snappy, and I was being smart, and she turned to me and she said, "Wow, you're really mean for a Buddhist." And that's when I looked at her and I said, "I'm a Buddhist, not the Buddha. If I were already centered and serene, I wouldn't need Buddhism." So that's where that phrase came from. It's not the most flattering story.
I love that story, and I think it would make for a wonderful article or even a book someday. One of the things that I've been attracted to about Ekoji is the fact that you have lay Dharma leaders. So, to you, what does it mean for you to be a lay Dharma leader? And how has that role changed your understanding of the Dharma or maybe your appreciation of Ekoji?
Being a lay Dharma leader, it was something that our previous resident minister, Reverend Hayashi, had suggested that I do.
Oh,
And at first, I was really flattered by the invitation. And then I realized very quickly that I should not have been so quick to be flattered. Um, I finally, after getting frustrated during one of the minister's assistance program meetings, I said, "Why did you even choose me?" And he looked at me and without missing a beat said, "You need the Dharma more than most people." And so I I think of it as a chance to learn more myself. And it's always been for me an opportunity to learn more. But also in terms of the leadership aspect, I'm not a very natural leader at all. But when I have to do things like that, I try and approach it as, okay, I'm sharing something that I really enjoy and really care about with other people.
Very good. Thanks.
Your Dharma messages, Molly, are known for being educational, moving, and oftentimes hilarious. Where do you find that inspiration?
When I have to give Dharma messages, super secret fun fact, I hate doing it. I hate writing them. I hate giving them. I never, I'm every single time I'm just like, why? Why would anyone listen to me? I'm out here just experimenting. I have no idea what I'm doing either. But I look at it as an opportunity because it does make me look at the world differently. Writing them or needing to write one makes me look at the world, and it draws my attention back to the fact that the Dharma is everywhere. It's in the good stuff, it's in the bad stuff, it's in the stuff you like, the stuff you don't. It's everywhere. And so when an event in my life triggers a strong emotional reaction, or
Mhm.
even like not a strong emotional reaction, but some level of emotional reaction, it's really interesting to see over the years, my default has gone to starting to interpret those um, using Buddhist teachings, right? Like things that I've learned along the way. So, one of my more recent ones was about mosquitoes being Dharma teachers, and that one I was bit by a mosquito like the day before I wrote that message. And so when I was bit and then I had the reaction and I did kill the mosquito. I'm not gonna lie about it. But then I thought about I'm like, why? Why am I being bit by this? Why does this exist? This is so frustrating. And then I kind of looked into it and the Dharma talk grew out of that. So it's little things like that that just happen in my day-to-day life. I do try and insert humor as much as possible because I think humans, we like to take ourselves really seriously, especially in spiritual practices and spiritual aspects of our lives. And for me, Buddhism really is fun, right? Being part of the temple is fun. Learning about Buddhism, it's a fun process. I enjoy it. And so I like my Dharma messages. And, with the world being what it is right now, we all know suffering. We we get reminded of that on a daily basis. So I don't want people to get so caught up thinking about the suffering that they forget about all of the good things and all of the fun things. And so I want Buddhism to be a space that's not just a theological or intellectual refuge, but also an emotional one. I want it to be a nice, safe, fun space. And so I try and bring that back by inserting humor into my messages.
Thanks, Molly. So let me get this straight. You hate writing a Dharma message, you hate delivering a Dharma message, and yet we all love your Dharma messages. So are you naturally funny, or do you have to think about how to bring some humor into your talks? And what do you think it does for listeners like myself?
I think I am sort of naturally funny in that I am a ridiculous human being. Like just me going around being me, ridiculous things. I do ridiculous things happen to me. I have ridiculous thoughts, and I embrace all of that, right? Like the absurdity is what makes it fun.
I love it.
But I don't think that I would necessarily be a particularly good stand-up comedian, say. I'm not
Mhm.
funny in that way. Um, And as for why everybody likes them so much, I haven't figured that part out yet.
Just keep giving them then, and we'll figure
Yeah.
it out. Thank you.
I'm always thrilled it's over. And I will say the one thing about them that I really do enjoy, apart from, it shifting my perspective on life around me, is the Dharma discussion groups and the feedback and other people's additional thoughts to what I throw out there. It when you write it, because I'm the only person seeing it before I deliver it, I'm only considering my point of view, but then you never know what somebody's going to say in the Dharma discussion group. And even if it's not something I was trying to relay at all, it's really interesting to get that feedback and be able to think about like it makes the Dharma message like a lesson for me twice.
Thank you.
Totally agree with that. So, Molly, what would you say goes through your mind right before the Dharma talk?
Don't forget to gasho.
Don't forget the Kuramoto.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's great.
And
Did I put the papers with the Dharma message under the podium? Is the sweat showing on the camera? Are my glasses going to stay on my nose?
uh,
How do you incorporate Buddhism into your everyday life on the farm surrounded by animals?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I don't know that I incorporate it so much as identify it when it happens, or not even identify it, but I've started to notice it more. So we take in a lot of senior animals. And there's a lot of predators out where we are. So we have a fair amount of loss. For a while there was a couple month period where it felt like we were losing a chicken, we lost a dog, we lost a cat, and they were both very old. And even most of the chickens were older. We lost our turkeys, and um, I think the Buddhism really helped me handle, like, not view that as a fault, right? It's a natural part of the life cycle, and it kept me from getting overly upset, right? Of course, I was still sad they were gone. Of course, I still grieved for them. But the reminder that this is a natural part of the life cycle. And so the teaching of impermanence on the farm is really super helpful all the time. So causes and conditions, things being outside of my control and having to roll with that and accept that and being able to identify the things that I can influence and the things that I can't. Those two things are super necessary on a daily basis.
you've delivered Dharma messages inspired by specific animals and as sentient beings. So, do you think animals have their own form of Buddha nature?
Yeah, so actually personally, I think kind of everything does. When you think about the Dharma as being the ultimate universal truth,
Mhm.
for me, that implies that my entire experience, everything that I experience and interact with, is somehow tied to the Dharma. So even for me, inanimate objects, even their organizational principles or the way that they've developed to function, that's all the result of causes and conditions, and so it all has Buddha nature. Now, do I think animals specifically have thoughts and personalities and social lives? And yes, 100%. I see it all the time. We have yet to have an animal that did not have a personality. They all have personalities, and many of them have very strong personalities and very different personalities. Justin is like still regularly blown away. He's like, how can these chickens all be so distinct in the ways that they act and react to things? It doesn't, and I'm like, because they have different personalities. The dogs have different personalities. Um, the goats, oh my goodness, the goats all have very different personalities, and the pigs have very strong personalities. So, in that sense, I think I view myself as interacting more closely with the animals than with inanimate objects, which maybe is
Yep.
like when we say Buddha nature, we are kind of thinking of that individual identity, I think. And so I definitely think the animals have that. They're not just computers running pre-written programs.
Hmm.
Thank
Can
you.
you can you think of an example, Molly, in a way in which the animals taught you the Dharma in a certain way or an unexpected way?
I think that they do that all the time. They teach me how to exist in the present.
Mm.
I think most animals are much better at being in the present moment than humans are. And so, like, even watching them problem solve, right? They don't plan how to solve a problem. They are handed a problem and you can watch them do this, right? Like you can see the little gears turning metaphorically. And so I think they've taught me a lot about living in the moment and especially problem solving in the moment. Accepting that when a problem arises, no matter what I do, I'm not going to have the perfect solution, right? Like there's going to be some reason why the perfect solution is not available. And so learning to be okay with an acceptable solution.
Very good. I have three other friends who are trained in library science. You're my fourth such friend. So how has your training in library science shaped the way you study or think about Buddhism?
I'm going to bridge that. I'm going to start from the side of library science and then bridge it into Buddhism. So, when I first applied to a master's program in library science, the essay that they gave us was why do you want, it was essentially, why do you want to be a librarian? What about it, you know? And I knew that I liked books. I like to read. I always have. But that wasn't really, that didn't feel like the answer for me, right? So I started thinking about it and I ended up writing my essay on essentially connecting people with the information that they're looking for. So I really do, I enjoy helping people connect with the item, the information, the resource that they're trying to find. Whether that's something, I had a gentleman come into a public library I worked at one day, and he wanted to find this article about a time that back when he was a paratrooper, he parachuted into a sandstorm in the middle of the desert. And he said, my grandkids don't believe that this happened and that there was an article about it in Time magazine. And I'm trying to find this old, like, it was like a 40-year-old
Mhm.
article. And so being able to find that for him and provide that to him, and I made sure he had a printout for each of his grandkids. I was like, we could show them.
I love it.
Um, but like that's what what really drew me to library science and to wanting to work in libraries and be in libraries. And I think I've found a very similar, I guess, mode of functioning in Buddhism. So I really enjoy talking to visitors that come into the temple, especially the ones that are actively practicing another faith, or even if they're not. I like bridging the divides
Mhm.
between and letting them know, like we're not here. We encourage whatever spiritual practice speaks to you. Like I'm not here to judge you. I'm not here to tell you you're wrong. I don't think that you are. I'm just helping point out similarities between the different spiritual approaches. And so I really enjoy being able to answer people's questions about Buddhism, also demystifying Buddhism for them.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Molly, if you could recommend just one book that helped shape your understanding of Jodo Shinshu, what would it be and why?
It would be without a doubt Everyday Suchness by Reverend Kubose.
Yeah.
It has completely changed the way that I think about, especially Dharma talks, because most of the chapters and essays in the book are edited Dharma talks. And what he really showed me was that you can approach Buddhism in a way that, I mean, going back to Shinran, it's useful to you every day. It doesn't have to be super intellectual. It doesn't have to have footnotes and citations. And I mean, it's great when it does. I'm not knocking it, but um, his writing style, his speaking style is much more grounded. And that was much more accessible for me. And so that not only do I enjoy that book and I've read it, I've had to buy a second copy because the first copy fell apart, and I've gifted it multiple times. So I really enjoy that book, especially I give it to people who aren't Buddhists all the time. Because it's a nice way for them to kind of be exposed to the teachings and maybe get something else that helps them without feeling like I'm trying to convert them. Um, so I'm a really big fan of that book. It has changed the way that I view the world, right? Like absolutely. His Before that, most of my exposure to actual Buddhist study was very intellectual. It was very thought intensive. It required a lot of study, a lot of time, and honestly, I just wasn't smart enough. But then this particular book was recommended to me by Reverend Umezu, and it has been an absolute game changer, and I very much enjoy it. And I think I would even credit that book with why my Dharma talks have started to take the shape that they've taken.
So, at least one more question on the library side of things in your background. Are there other authors or book titles that you might recommend, or even subject areas related to Buddhism that you would encourage people to consider?
One Buddhist author that I really enjoy, who is a little more academic, would be Taitetsu Uno.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Um, that I really like his writing because it is academic, but it is also still accessible. And I personally, it's not Jodo Shinshu. Put that. I really enjoyed Thich Nhat Hanh.
I do
I
too.
think he had a lot of insight. And then for other subject areas, I am fascinated by the way the human brain works, because I've struggled with mental health issues for most of my life, and so reading about how the human brain works and why humans behave, human behavior is really interesting to me,
Yeah,
and animal behavior
yeah,
is really
yeah.
interesting to me. I mean, like it's so funny how all of the things in my life end up connecting to each other. Um, so I would say a lot of like cognitive behavioral science. I spend a lot of time perusing things like that, and it's always super fun for me when I'm reading a book about cognitive behavioral science and they say something that is so Buddhist. I'm just like, oh,
Molly, how did your time on the Ekoji board of directors during the pandemic shape your relationship to the three treasures, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha?
well, I spent a really ungodly amount of time with you. Ungodly. Um, because we were in a Buddhist temple. The pandemic was really interesting. And it was a really interesting experience for me because I was on the board of directors. I also was in a position, I was working in an animal hospital and I was considered an essential worker. So I was never actually quarantined at all through the pandemic. I got vaccinated. I got all my vaccines and all of that, and I followed safety precautions as much as possible. But I was never actually in quarantine. I went to work every day. And like our procedures changed, but the pandemic overall was a very odd experience for me. And I think I will say, I did not get the same level of isolation that a lot of people got. I was still out interacting, admittedly with social distancing protocols, but still interacting with coworkers. I was still physically going to work every day. I never worked from home. Um, So, in that sense, the pandemic kind of didn't hit me as hard as it hit a lot of people, psychologically and emotionally and spiritually. It also helped that I was meeting Andrea regularly at the temple. Also, obviously, with social distancing protocols in place. What was really more impacting to me was the responsibility of figuring out when it's safe to allow people, like when it's safe to have an in-person service, when it's safe to allow people back into the temple, when it's safe to have an in-person board meeting. And I I was really worried about, like, I legitimately was worried about the Sangha's safety, which just kind of drove home for me. Like, no, these aren't just people I enjoy, these are people I care about, people I worry about. Um, and so that was very much on my mind throughout most of that period. Um, I spent more time reading about Buddhism during that time as opposed to actually being at the temple. So that was also an interesting difference for me because most of the time for me, Buddhism is something that I engage in actively. I'm here at the temple, I'm doing things related to Buddhism. I do still read about Buddhism a little bit, but not as much as some of my minister's assistant peers do. They are much more well studied than I am. Pandemic, I think, really drove home a lot of the teachings of the Dharma, right? Like, I think all of us needed the Dharma just to process what was happening and to keep going forward and to, you know, understand that this is another challenge that we face. And I think we're kind of seeing that again now, where the Dharma is something that people are turning to really help them get through a difficult time.
Well, if it hadn't been for the pandemic, I probably wouldn't have found Ekoji. And as a former board member, or maybe still a current board member, I would thank you for helping to put in place all the electronic machinery, if you will, that brings the Sunday services to people all around the United States and world if they want to join. So, Molly, what advice would you give to someone who feels drawn to Buddhism but isn't sure where to begin?
Yeah, come to service, come to a bone. If you're really, really feeling hesitant, watch service online. You know, that's one of the things that I do really like about is having the virtual service is that if you're new to Buddhism, if you're worried what people think, you can zoom in and watch with your camera off and nobody's gonna notice or comment. You know, it's totally fine. So I think if you're interested in Buddhism, if you're curious about Buddhism, if you want to experience Buddhism and see how you respond to it, then being able to do a virtual service is a really helpful way to learn what to expect while still being in the comfort of your home or your safe space.
Molly, if you could have a conversation with any Buddhist teacher, past or present, including a two or four-legged one, who would it be and what would you want to talk about?
It would be probably Shinran's daughter Kakushini. I would want to know, I would want her perspective on Anger did. Like, so my initial reaction was, oh, I'd want to talk to Shinran. I'd want to learn about like how he realized this and what made him think of that. But actually, when I think about it, the women around Shinran, Shini and Kakushini, they are very much credited with organizing the teachings and carrying on the tradition after he passed. And so I think it would be really interesting to talk to them to be able to get their perspective on Shinran and his teachings and his life and what made them want to make sure that those teachings were available for generations to come. Like what were the factors that were occurring at the time and you know what were things that they were thinking about and what made them include some things and what made them exclude other things. And so no, I think that that would be a really fascinating conversation.
So you've been involved in the Minister Assistant Program, or MAP, through the Buddhist Churches of America's Center for Buddhist Education. What drew you to that path and what impact has it had on your relationship with the Dharma?
It was something I was encouraged to do. It was not something I was interested in it because I wanted to learn more. And I felt like I didn't have the capabilities to essentially study on my own. I wanted guidance. And so what drew me to it was actually my desire to learn more about it. And this was a way that gave me access to that information. Um, I kind of will admit I didn't realize I was going to have to be in front of people as much as I am. So that was a fun surprise. And by fun, I mean not. But I think what's kept me going in it is realizing that the being in front of people and being around people and the opportunity to meet people, those are all ways that I also learn. So that's kind of what drew me to it and why I remain involved in it, even though like I am aware that there are much more qualified ministers' assistants running around.
Good. Thank you.
Molly, you've been both a listener and a co-host on Echo Ekoji. What is it like to be in the guest seat now?
It kind of feels like being in an interrogation room. I mean, but with two good cops.
Okay.
Uh, I love it. So
Oh.
Molly, our final question, especially to Sangha members, is at this point in your life, what does a koji mean to you?
Ekoji is home, like in a very real way. Like we have the farm and we have our responsibilities there, and that is home in its way. But
Yep.
Ekoji is kind of the center of my external world. Um, so it's these are the people I come to for a Sangha. These are the people that I come to when I need something. These are the people that I come together with to celebrate. So I think Ekoji as a place or an institution very much encourages the Sangha aspect of things, and then also being able to study the Dharma encourages the spiritual aspect of things. So Ekoji has essentially just become a place that meets a lot of my personal needs, which is kind of selfish, but
Oh, that's all good. Thank you.
Molly, thank you for joining us and for sharing your wisdom, your warmth, and at times wonderfully offbeat Dharma insights.
Your ability to find the Buddha in the barn, in books, and everyday life is something that really resonates with us and with our listeners.
To our audience, thank you for being a part of this ongoing conversation.
If today's talk made you think, smile, and look at the world a little differently, we hope you'll subscribe, share, and send a link to someone who might appreciate watching and listening to this episode.
Until next time, Namo Amida Butsu.
Namo Amida Butsu.
Amantaps.